and New Covenants.
The Old Covenant consisted of many covenants. For example, God promised to never flood the entire earth again.
The New Covenant had only one covenant, which was Jesus.
The Old and New Covenants relate to Samuel 17, verses 12 through 51, because David promised himself that he would stay strong and defeat Goliath.
The foreshadowing of David and Goliath is that David is the king and slays Goliath, and later on, Jesus becomes the king and slays our sins away.
David was only 10 generations removed from Judah, one of Jacob's 12 sons. David was the son of Jesse, a farmer of Bethlehem, and eventually became the first king to rule a united Israel in Palestine. According to the genealogies given in Matthew and Luke, David was an ancestor of Christ and so is of vast significance theologically. Christ was the son of Joseph the carpenter and Mary, and Joseph was a descendant of David. But theologically, Christ is considered to be the Son of God himself, thus making Joseph Christ's foster father. It is thought that the name Goliath was an Israelite phonetic translation of the Philistinian name Alots. Goliath himself was a member of the Anakim, a race of giant people who inhabited the Philistine cities in the neighborhood of Hebron. The Anakim appear to have been an aggressive people who terrified the Israelites. Jesus' prophecies state that the next leader shall be an ancestor of David.
Literal meaning of the story of David and Goliath. The story given to us was the story of David and Goliath. David was a shepherd boy who was the youngest in his family and wasn't very strong. He had to send news to his family, but ends up going into battle against the Philistine Goliath. Of course, Goliath thought he had it in the bag, but he couldn't be more wrong. With the power of God behind him, David took the stone in his slingshot and killed Goliath.
God will use the unique skills he's already placed in your hands. So don't worry about wearing the king's armor. Just be yourself and use the familiar gifts and talents God has given you. He will work miracles through you. David's faith in God caused him to look at the giant from a different perspective. We look at giant problems and impossible situations from God's perspective. We realize that God will fight for us and with us. When we put things in proper perspective, we see more clearly and can fight more effectively. David did the right thing in spite of discouraging insults and fearful threats. Only God's opinion mattered to David.